You're managing a lot of debt. There are probably lots of things that you have tried, some of the things you're interested in knowing more about. One of them could be a conversation with something called a licensed insolvency trustee. So LITs are federally regulated. You've probably seen the ads around, maybe on a bus or a subway or a radio ad. And they're a really important group of humans who help people who have debt that they can't manage. We're going to talk about what an LIT is, what they can do, what they can't do with Caryl Newbery Mitchell. She is a senior vice president in MNP's consumer insolvency practice. MNP is Canada's largest insolvency firm. Hello, Caryl.
Hello, Bruce. Thank you for having me.
What kinds of situations typically lead someone to contact a licensed insolvency trustee? What are they dealing with? Why do they pick up the phone?
Right. Well, there are so many different situations that lead to someone contacting us. And that's why we always like to remind people that they are not alone. We're here because there are many people out there that are experiencing debt problems in every way imaginable. Having said that, there are some common situations, and especially some common situations that we're seeing kind of these days. Marital breakdown, especially when there's protracted or very litigious situations, unexpected job loss. We are seeing a lot of people that maybe were laid off and are having a harder time finding new work. Health related issues, and that can be physical or it could be mental. And I would say we're seeing a little bit more of an increase in mental health. Cost of living increases that are outpacing income. I mean, this is what we're talking about all the time these days. And that results in people using their credit to pay their everyday living expenses.
Yeah.
Over leveraged real estate due to the reduction in the real estate values. And also we're seeing a lot of pre-construction, for example, condominium, especially in Toronto, purchases that people aren't able to close on because the values have gone down. And then we're also seeing a lot of the fallout, I think, still from the pandemic with small business owners. And we're seeing that they were kind of able to limp along, but now, not quite able to anymore. There's tax debt, there's director liabilities, personal guarantees on business loans. And so those are kind of things that we're seeing a lot these days. But as you can see, it's a very broad spectrum.
A lot going on.
Yeah.
There are a lot of organizations in this continuum of care. So there's nonprofit credit counselors, there's some fintechs, the banks, the collections agencies. There's lots of people who have their eyes on clients who are dealing with all the circumstances that you've talked about. But licensed insolvency trustees have a very clear lane, a very clear mandate, and a very clear regulatory framework in which they are the only ones who can do a couple of very specific things. Tell us about that.
Yeah, exactly like you said. So we are the only professionals licensed by the federal government to administer specifically formal insolvency proceedings like a bankruptcy or a consumer proposal. We go through extremely rigorous training in order to become a licensed insolvency trustee, like as an individual. But what's important to understand is that we are required to assess a person's full financial situation and explain all of their debt relief options, even if that option doesn't include us. So that means that the consultation is not just about whether someone should file a consumer proposal or a bankruptcy. And it's an opportunity to understand all of the options that are available to you and what each one means for an individual's specific circumstances.
If a consumer proposal or a bankruptcy filing makes the most sense, and there's a lot of quantitative reasons why that would be so for people's circumstances. There's just no other way out based on the income that they have and the debt that they're carrying. What does that process look like?
Right. So pretty much all licensed insolvency trustees offer free consultation. So when you come to your consultation, you should come to your consultation with information about your income, your assets, obviously who you owe money to, general information about your household. But usually my first question when I'm doing a consultation is, what brought you to reach out for help right now? What's the impetus? Because we know that we're usually the last people that people want to speak to. We're the last people they called because they just have that stigma around bankruptcy or insolvency. But usually there's a very specific reason why someone's picked up the phone at this time. And that really helps us to understand what the pressure is, and sometimes, can very quickly lead to what the solution may be.
There are lots of things you can do. There are some things you can't do. And you probably have clients wishing you could ask their boss for a raise, wishing you could help them sell their condo for what they paid for it, or, do some other things. what are things that clients would love you to do that are outside the scope of your work?
Okay, probably the most common one is before we're appointed in a formal capacity as your bankruptcy trustee or proposal administrator, can we negotiate with your creditors? Can we, talk to this person and see if we can get a deal? Because we seem maybe knowledgeable, obviously, about the creditor space. So kind of acting outside of a formal insolvency proceeding is not typical. There are a lot of issues with credit reports, credit reporting. I'm sure you see that as well, whether it's errors and things like that. And so typically when we go through an insolvency proceeding, we guide people in terms of how they can deal with those types of issues. But we're not able to pick up the phone and call a credit reporting agency and fix those issues for them. So that can sometimes be frustration.
These days, there is just a ton of advertising on social media. Because of what I do for a living, I tend to get served up a lot of those ads. And they'll often try and use this phrase about this federal program that nobody knows about, and this will help you, dot, dot, dot. I know that isn't what your firm does, but some do. They reference this federal program. What is it that they're talking about?
Unfortunately, like you said, there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet, and not all of it, unfortunately, is well-meaning. I think most times what they're talking about is a consumer proposal, and a consumer proposal is where you are able to settle the debt for less than what you owe. But nobody, without knowing your individual circumstances, can claim to be able to reduce your debt by a fixed percentage. That just isn't the case. Every proposal has to be based on an individual circumstances.
Right.
And certainly if the company advertising this is not a licensed insolvency trustee, then, they have no business advertising that at all because they can't actually administer one. Yeah.
I want to ask you about that because, we are on the same page in terms of these unregulated debt advisors. Your regulator, the Office of the Superintendent of Bankruptcy, has made a real effort to try and remove or at least reduce the frequency with which consumers are sucked in by these debt advisors. How do you guide people in terms of how they can tell who is a regulated LIT and who is a really great digital marketer online, but who's going to charge you a fee for a service that you don't need?
Right. So again, most licensed insolvency trustees, all licensed insolvency trustees will have it clearly indicated on their website or on their marketing materials that they are a licensed insolvency trustee. As you mentioned, the government has really clamped down on other parties making mention of consumer proposals or licensed insolvency trustees on their website when they're not, but there are still going to be some bad players out there, obviously. You're also going to find that most licensed insolvency trustees are not going to ask for large lump sum payments upfront.
Right.
That's unusual. They may ask for a small fee that you file at the time of the filing, but it always goes towards your proposal. We're not able to take any fees outside of your proposal. And so when someone's asking you kind of for a lump sum and then they're passing you on to what seems like a third party, that's kind of a signal that this is probably not a licensed insolvency trustee that you're dealing with.
People pick up the phone. They have a call. You are empathetic. You are validating. You are awesome. You're insightful. They decide that they're going to move forward. Their circumstances are a fit for a consumer proposal, which is percentage-wise what's more common than a bankruptcy filing. How long does that process take to unfold? So after that first call, I assume there's some back and forth and setting the thing up. And then there's, probably a couple of years in which they're paying back an amount every month.
Yeah, most proposals are structured as monthly payments over 5 years. Doesn't say that's not necessarily every single time, but most of the time. And during that time, there's basically a what's called the stay proceedings. That's a legal term. But from a debtor's perspective, there is a break. There's no more calls from creditors. That weight on your shoulder of having to manage all these different debts is gone because you're making one monthly payment to a consumer proposal. During that time, there's some counseling sessions that are part of the process. So you have an opportunity to learn about maybe better use of financial instruments, budgeting, how to rebuild your credit, making some financial goals and how to achieve them. So during the time that you're in the proposal, you have the opportunity to learn, get some break, obviously, an opportunity to get a break from the creditors and the stress. And you can also start working on rebuilding your credit. So it's going to depend again on your individual circumstances. Some people find they're able to get a secured credit card during that process, which is where you put down some cash collateral and then they give you a credit limit. Some people are able to go straight to an unsecured credit card. Really depends on your income, assets, et cetera. But there really is an opportunity as part of this process to rebuild your credit, make a plan for your future. And once the proposal is completed, that's when the debts are actually written off. So you do have to complete it. You have to get to the end of that 5 years and make all the payments. But your credit at that time, all those debts will fall off. They won't be reported on your credit report anymore. But that's why it's good to actually have some credit so that there is something for the credit bureaus to report on. Otherwise, no credit, as we know, is just not good either, right?
Not great either.
Yeah.
One last question before we go. You have dedicated your career to this, to helping people in this way. You have talked to hundreds and hundreds of people. There is probably one or two things that you say in almost every single conversation.
Mm-hmm.
What is that one thing that it's like the universal question or the universal message that you say almost every time?
Yeah, I think every time when I speak to someone, when we're doing, when we're at the sign up or the assessment, it's called, where we're signing all the paperwork and I say, how are you feeling today? And it's a really important question because I get all ranges of answers. Some people say, I'm feeling amazing. This feels like the weight's coming off my chest. Some people I feel ashamed and I feel like this is the worst thing. And when I hear that answer, I really try to get them to reframe how they're thinking about it and say, you could feel that way, and it's understandable given everything that's out there about bankruptcy and insolvency. But you are taking action. You are doing something to deal with your debt, and you should be really proud of that. You made the call. You're doing it. If you bury your head in the sand and you did nothing, that creates chaos for you. It creates chaos for your creditors. We're really fortunate in Canada to have this really robust insolvency system that you have the ability to take advantage of. And that's what it's here for. It's actually everybody is better off by you engaging in this process and moving forward. So I really, really tried. I don't know if I'm always successful, but that's my goal, is to try and reframe it as a positive thing.
It's great. Caryl, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Caryl Newbery Mitchell is a senior vice president at MNP. They are Canada's largest insolvency firm.